Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this Security in NFC Readers webinar delivered by Mobile Knowledge and NXP Semiconductors. Today we have 161 registered people from 27 different countries. Thank you all for joining. The overall length of the session will be 60 minutes. If you have questions during the presentation, write them in the questions area. Please don't wait until the end, as we will not be able to pick them up, filter, and answer them live. When you close the session, you will be asked to fill out a short evaluation survey. Please take a minute to complete it. Let me also remind you that after the webinar, you will receive a link to the recorded session and the presentation. Now, I would like to introduce Carlos Paterna, an application engineer at Mobile Knowledge, who is our speaker today for this webinar about security in NFC readers. Hello, Carlos. Good morning.
Hello, Eric. Good morning.
You can start whenever you want. Thank you.
So, thank you, Eric. And again, thanks everyone for joining this live webinar. As the name says, today we're going to talk about the possible security enhancements that appear around the design of an NFC-enabled device. We all know that security is a very sensitive and wide topic. And when it comes to IT and electronic devices, it can be your strongest advantage or your worst nightmare. Very well, so let's get going. Here in this slide, you can see all the different topics that are going to be covered during the next hour. We will start with a quick refresh of what is NFC technology, very quick, allow me to do so. The different NFC-enabled device architectures we may find out there, and which are the security concerns or needs that may arise. Identify in this way two main categories: how to secure the data exchange through the NFC interface, which will lead us to the introduction of information security goals, cryptographic mechanisms, that techniques to ensure those goals, and how to protect from unauthorized device access, both from a remote access perspective. This is ensuring that only authorized entities have access to the device, and also protecting the access to data from the NFC interface. For both categories, different products from NXP will be introduced and presented. We will then review two particular use cases and how these security enhancements that we've explained before apply specifically. And finally, we will wrap up the session with a summary and conclusions that will help you tackle your next design with the appropriate know-how. So let's get started with the very first, which is NFC and security. So even if you're already familiar with NFC technology, it is always important to refresh the fundamentals of it. NFC is a contactless proximity technology working at 13.56 MHz. It is standardized and compliant with the existing contactless technology and infrastructure. With an operating range of less than 10 centimeters, it offers an easy, simple, and convenient way to exchange data between two devices by simply bringing them into close proximity. Data exchange around NFC is open, interoperable, and standardized following NFC forum specifications. Would also like to highlight the inherent privacy and security of NFC technology to its short range. Also, another important aspect to highlight from NFC compared to existing contactless technology infrastructure is that it offers three different modes of operation. On car emulation mode, our NFC device can now emulate a contactless car. The traditional contactless reader is able to read the emulated car in the same way as it was reading a traditional plastic contactless car or paper ticket. In read and write mode, our NFC device behaves as a contactless reader, and it can read and write into tags or contactless cars. In fact, read and write mode and card emulation mode are modes of operation that are exactly as the contactless scenario. Yes? And here, finally, we have peer-to-peer mode. Here, two NFC-enabled devices can exchange small amounts of data just by bringing them into close proximity. This is the new device-to-device connectivity mode introduced by NFC. So let me justify why we are tackling, or why we are willing to explain here, the security enhancements around NFC. And this is because it comes from the fact that NFC technology has already achieved a high penetration in our daily lives. And these figures are only planned to grow in the coming years. So while it is important to recognize the increased number of NFC-enabled smartphones, in fact, all major phone manufacturers are already adding NFC to their models. So the fact that NFC-enabled smartphones are here and are in possession of everyone implies that easy, convenient, and magical services can be deployed across all kinds of devices by adding NFC technology. Remember that I have said before that NFC is an open and standardized technology. So the large base of smartphones supporting NFC implies that more and more consumer electronic devices are adding this technology, from wearables to healthcare devices, speakers, headsets, printers, smart meters, and the list could go on and on and on. At NXP, we strongly believe that NFC is a key technology in the Internet of Things revolution. Yes. And while talking about the Internet of Things, there are many definitions for the Internet of Things, or even the Internet of Everything revolution. The common concept across all of them is the interconnection using different connectivity technologies amongst multiple computing devices, with different levels of computing power and connectivity capabilities. So according to IDC, by 2020, more than 200 billion IoT devices will be available. This means that those devices will be sensing, collecting, and sharing data. And obviously, all this frenetic data collection and processing is bringing all together one of the biggest challenges related with IT technologies nowadays, which is the security of that data and those devices. During this webinar, I will try to present the security enhancements that NFC-enabled devices may support and how to tackle them during the design or application implementation. But for this, we need to understand the typical NFC device architectures. And allow me here in this slide to represent 3 different architectures for an NFC-enabled device. Obviously, this is an oversimplification. However, it still allows us to go through the different security enhancements that real-life design may face if required. On the left side of the slide, we can observe an NFC reader, an NFC-enabled reader. This is an active NFC device with an NFC reader IC that allows this device to generate NFC field and establish a communication with other NFC-enabled devices. Depending on the NFC reader IC capabilities, the device shall be able to operate in the 3 modes of operation we've seen before, or just as a reader. The architecture shown here is a simplification, but covers all kinds of NFC readers, as the NFC reader IC is usually connected to the NFC antenna, and also to the microcontroller, yes, which drives the reader IC. On top of this, any device may also offer other connectivity technologies to reach the cloud, as represented here. On the right side of the slides, we show 2 types of NFC tag-enabled devices. In both cases, an NFC tag is a passive NFC device. This means that it does not generate RF field and only responds to commands sent by the NFC reader. Storage of data in NFC tag is open and standardized under NFC forum specifications. Therefore, any NFC reader is able to read out what is written on the NFC tag memory by bringing it into close proximity. So regarding the 2 different architectures shown, on the top we can see an architecture of a device implementing an NFC connected tag. So an NFC connected tag, besides the NFC interface, it also offers another interface that can be connected to the host or microcontroller to trigger specific actions or even establish a communication through an I2C bus, for example. In this case, as in the NFC reader, this device may also be connected to the cloud. On the bottom, we can see an architecture where an NFC tag is added to a product. This product might contain or other electronics or not. However, the NFC tag only offers the NFC interface to the outside. One important thing to mention, again, is that, as I have said before, NFC technology is an open and standardized technology. This means that NFC-enabled devices can interact between them if they're implemented according to NFC forum specifications. And also, important, very important, the proximity inherent to NFC is already adding a certain level of security and a strong barrier to possible attackers. So eavesdropping the communication, so spying the communication, the NFC communication, is certainly very difficult. But what happens if our application requires enhanced security? Well, this is the million-dollar question. If our application requires enhanced security, there is a need to evaluate our system, analyze the security breaches it may offer, and implement countermeasures to avoid them. First of all, and in case you might be doubting why we would need security, enhance security. Let's imagine that our application is a smart meter which sends back to the utility company the gas consumption of a house. So I'm quite sure here that the utility company does not want that the data sent back from the meter is modified or faked. Another example is an NFC-enabled access control system to a highly secure facility of a company. Here, the company doesn't only want to ensure that only authorized persons are allowed to enter, but also to make sure that the data exchange through the NFC interface, through the NFC transaction, cannot be spied upon and replicated afterwards, even though it is very difficult. In both cases, the devices to support these use cases shall implement the proper countermeasures to ensure a secure data exchange. And as said before, NFC technology is open and standardized by default. This means data exchange through the NFC interface is done in plain, with only the security inherent to the proximity between both devices. In the cases explained before, we might want to avoid that someone is able to spy on the transaction and obtain the information exchange. So this is something that shall be tackled when performing the security analysis of our system. Another possibility around related to data protection is that NFC tags store data in them. So in case our application requires enhanced security, so we don't want anyone to understand which data we are storing in here, there is a need to implement data protection, data security measures again. So, and also if our device is connected to the cloud, through other connectivity technologies, and this has nothing to do with NFC, we shall ensure that only authorized devices are able to access and communicate with it. From this, we can conclude that there are two main approaches to enhancing security, those related to data security measures and those related to unauthorized access protection measures. In this webinar, we will go in deep detail in both. But now, let me highlight the most important things and present what we're going to see later. Data exchange protection is a critical topic in many security-related applications. Remember, not in all of them, in the ones that require this additional security. Just to name a few, such as access control systems, automatic fare collection systems, payment applications, and e-government documents like passports. In all these type of applications, not only the data that is being exchanged is of a private and confidential nature, but also allows to perform financial transactions, enter security areas, or even identify ourselves against a governmental service and be entitled to benefits. This type of information can certainly be very attractive, as you can imagine, to criminals and hackers, as it always allows them to obtain a clear benefit. And remember, as I said before, that NFC technology is open and standardized. Therefore, this data exchange is done in plain, if no other techniques are applied. And here is where cryptography kicks in. So cryptography kicks in as a set of techniques and methods to secure the data being exchanged through the NFC channel between the two entities establishing the communication. Applying cryptographic methods implies the usage of cryptographic keys on both sides of the communication, on the reader and on the other side, on the credential. We will later analyze in detail how we can secure the data being exchanged and which methods do exist, as well as the different cryptographic algorithms. But let me already highlight one very important thing. Strong cryptographic algorithms are as well open and standardized. Therefore, the overall security in the system relies fully on the secrecy of the cryptographic keys being used. This means that the key management and cryptographic implementation becomes a critical topic to address to ensure the overall system security. It is true that our systems could use the most advanced and secure cryptographic algorithm and process. However, if our device ends up leaking the secret keys used for securing the data exchange, all our work and effort will be of no worth, and our system will be compromised consequently. What is also important now is that after applying cryptographic techniques to protect the data exchange in our NFC system, it automatically becomes a closed system which is not interoperable with the rest of NFC devices, but only with those that are in possession of the same secret key. So we're moving from an open and standardized technology to a closed system that only with the key you're able to understand each other. So another security enhancement that we have seen before in our connected world is to ensure that devices that are connected to the internet are protected from non-authorized access and attacks. This is because nowadays many competing devices are connected to the cloud in some way or another. These devices are sharing data and taking decisions based on data received and processed. So it becomes critical to ensure that those devices are not compromised by an attacker, which may lead to a huge impact in our daily lives. Just imagine that a hacker is able to get access to the electricity network and switch on or off nodes as wanted. Imagine that someone is able to access our home network through a router, obtaining private data from the many devices connected to our network. This means that devices shall be designed in a way to ensure that only authorized entities have access to them through the cloud, but also that the exposure of personal and private data is prevented. And again, here we step into the cryptographic world. All these objectives, stated here and as I just said, can be achieved through hardware-based security modules, implementing state-of-the-art cryptographic mechanisms. Besides this angle around unauthorized access protection, which is the most critical one for those devices connected to the cloud, it is also important to mention that EEPROM memory of NFC attacks, as I said, is accessible through the NFC interface. EEPROM may be rewritten again and again if the NFC tag is not properly configured. And again, this might be okay for our application, but we need to evaluate if this is required or not. So later in this webinar, we will review the solutions NXP offers to ensure a secure access to the cloud from the device, as well as mention the mechanisms offered by our NFC tags to protect the data written on those tags. Good. So before diving into the details, let me clarify and try to understand to all of you what's my view, at least personal and also shared by many people, what does security mean and why it is important. And here I always like to say that security is a state of mind. From my professional experience, I have learned one thing. What for one person seems to be required in terms of security might completely be different to another person, even if we are talking of the same type of application at the end. Another important thing, perfect security does not exist. This means that even if you consider that your system is completely secure, well, you're probably wrong. Always, and always, important here, or important concept, a compromise between security and risk needs to be found. This means that if an attacker needs to spend considerable amount of resources to hack your system, and the outcome is that the attacker has access to the public transport network for free, well, this would probably lead the attacker to focus on other type of applications and systems, and you will be okay. The easiest thing for the attacker is probably to jump the barrier. So when designing your device, you shall always think about what needs to be protected and how. And at the end, securing the information and process for your devices will require a combination of techniques and protocols, some of them related to cryptography and others to procedures or even laws. Excellent. So, having said all this, let's now focus on secure data exchange measures. Okay. So while it is true that NFC technology is inherently secure due to the required proximity between the two devices, and it makes it very difficult to spy upon this communication, it is important to take into account that this strong security barrier for many attackers might not be enough to cope with some applications and use cases requirement. Here is where we shall start considering adding enhanced security measures to our system. And as a very first key point, we need to identify what is that we want to protect. And in this case, it's very clear that the data exchange through the NFC interface between A and B. Yes? In fact, securing the data exchange can mean various things depending on which information security goal we want to achieve. It is not the same to achieve confidentiality or to ensure confidentiality than to ensure integrity, and here we will review later, yes, in the coming slide. Here is where cryptography kicks in and appears, yes. Cryptography means from Greek, hidden writing, and it is a multidisciplinary science that provides us with a set of techniques and mechanisms to achieve those information security goals. And in our computing era, cryptography has become the foundation over which many of the applications we use in our daily lives rely upon, protecting and ensuring that the digital information we share is secure. And as I said before, securing the information can mean various things depending on how and what do we want to protect. Here you can see the threat, information security goal, mechanism, and algorithm approach. And why? Let me present it right away. So let's dive into what does the different information security goal implies. And the concepts introduced in this slide are very important, as our application might require one particular information security goal or a combination of them. First, confidentiality. Well, confidentiality, in this case, we want to guarantee that the data exchange cannot be read by an unauthorized entity. So, someone spying upon the communication would not understand anything if this entity or person is not in possession of the same secret key. As said in the previous slide, for every threat, there is an information security goal, confidentiality in this case. And for every information security goal, there is a cryptographic mechanism to achieve it. In this case, it is encryption and decryption, which are probably some words that you're familiar with. So remember, encryption, decryption allows us to obtain confidentiality during the data exchange. Integrity. Integrity means to guarantee that the data exchange cannot be modified by unauthorized entities. Let me put it in other words here. It provides mechanisms to ensure that if the data exchange is modified, this can be detected. Again, integrity is achieved through CMAC or digital signature mechanisms. So only the entities in possession of the secret are able to detect if unauthorized changes have been performed during the data exchange. And finally, authentication, which is to guarantee that the mutual identification of two parties entering into our communication. This is particularly important, yes? This is to ensure that the two entities that are going to start exchanging data are who they claim they are. So authentication is achieved through specific process and protocols and can be static or dynamic, in fact, all of us authenticate ourselves statically against many devices. The PC, as soon as we introduce a password, this is a static authentication. So in this case, only one side, us, are authenticated towards the device. But we will see how it is possible to achieve mutual authentication, a dynamic protocol here, using a challenge response-based protocol. Good, so having quickly reviewed the information security goals, we want to highlight here, there is one thing that they have in common, is the algorithms, the cryptographic algorithms they use, they have in common. So we can achieve confidentiality, integrity, and authentication with TSS or AES, RSA, or ECC. Cryptographic algorithms are thoroughly tested algorithms by scientific community and computationally robust mathematical functions that allow to execute the mechanisms described here. And here we can identify two main categories of cryptographic algorithms. Symmetric cryptography, where the two entities exchanging the data to be secure use the same secret key. And here popular and widely extended symmetric algorithms are TSS and AES. And here, let me launch a question to the audience. You can answer it through the questions area. And I will respond it if we have time when we're finished. What does TSS and AES stand for? That's quite easy. And another question, which entity standardized them? Yeah, so which entity standardized these algorithms? Okay, another category for cryptographic algorithms is asymmetric cryptography. In asymmetric cryptography, a key pair called public and private key is used to secure the data exchange. So one entity is in possession of the secret key and other entities are in possession of the public key. This can be distributed across. Popular and extended, again, asymmetric algorithms are RSA and ECC. And again, another question I launch, what does RSA and ECC stand for? And $1 million question. On which mathematical functions are they based? No need to say that if you have any questions during these, during my speech, please paste them on the questions area and we will be pleased to answer them afterwards. So to finish with this slide, allow me to justify why I have only focused on these information security goals, because yes, there are many other information security goals. I have used these three information security goals as they are the most common objectives during a secure data exchange. Good, very well. So after this long explanation of this slide, let me quickly tackle the fact that symmetric and asymmetric cryptography implement slightly different mechanisms to achieve those information security goals. And you can take this slide as a reference. I would not like to go in detail of each mechanism. So it is not my intention to go on deep detail. The intention of this slide is that I want to highlight, and what I've said before, yes, that all these cryptographic mechanisms implies the usage of cryptographic keys. So they are involved. You can see them here, 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 and here as the key pairs. The secret keys are the basis to maintain the security in our system. So keeping those secret keys will ensure our system security. This means that our device will need to implement the adequate security measures to protect and manage those secret keys. And to ensure that the secret keys are protected in a correct way, well, NXP offers a series of products. And if we pick up again our three main architecture, we shall remember that an NFC reader is an active NFC device capable of triggering a communication against other NFC-enabled devices. If we want to enhance the security of the data exchange through the NFC interface, we have concluded that cryptographic techniques shall be applied. And to do so, we must use cryptographic keys that need to be secure. So we come to the question, yes? How and where are those secret keys located in the NFC reader architecture that we have seen before? A common approach is to store those keys in the microcontroller or host. If done this way, please bear in mind that microcontrollers are not designed to securely store and protect cryptographic keys. You can surf a little bit through the internet to be aware of this. So adding a NXP and NXP secure access module, or also known as SAM device, ensures the highest level of protection and security for those secret keys in our application. A SAM device will provide us with a secure storage area for multiple cryptographic keys, a secure cryptographic execution environment, and additional features to support a secure remote management of the keys and MIFARE cryptography to establish a secure channel against MIFARE products through the NFC interface. So overall, a full end-to-end security to our system. And here, NXP offers MIFARE SAM product family, and I would like to quickly highlight here MIFARE SAM AV2, which offers all the required features to enhance the security of your NFC reader in case your application requires it, of course. Supports symmetric cryptography, asymmetric cryptography, and offers a contact interface according to ISO 7816. This is the contact smart card standard, and it is Common Criteria EAL 5+ certified. Very well, excellent. Another need around data exchange is to protect, to protect the data that is stored on an NFC tag. And remember, when evaluating the different architectures of NFC-enabled devices, we have seen that NFC tags are passive devices that are able to store data in the EEPROM memory, which is accessible through the NFC interface. We have also seen that NFC technology is open and interoperable, meaning that data can be exchanged between any NFC device if they are complying with NFC forum specifications, while also keeping its inherent privacy and security due to proximity. But even if this is true, we have also analyzed that sometimes our applications might require additional security measures to protect the data being exchanged. In the case of the tags, this is still valid, and it might be necessary to ensure that the data stored in the EEPROM is secure. Now again, the information security concepts and security goals appear. One option is that we might want to ensure confidentiality over the data stored in the tag. We can do this by encrypting the data that is stored in the tag. This way, only entities, so only readers in possession of the secret key can decrypt that information and understand it. And again, here NXP recommends to use a SAM device in order to store the cryptographic keys on the NFC reader side. This will allow to read out the data, which is encrypted and decrypted using the cryptographic functions of the SAM, and then understand which data was stored in there. Another option is that our objective is to ensure integrity and authenticity of the data stored in the EEPROM. To do so, we can use asymmetric cryptography and sign the data stored in the tag with the secret key. Then the public key is distributed across multiple NFC readers, so NFC readers in possession of that public key, which can be again stored in the SAM. Then the NFC reader will use the SAM to verify the signature of the data stored in the tag and guarantee that this data has not been modified and the data has been signed by the entity who claims to, yes? And that we are expecting to be signed. Very good. So we are pretty much done with securing data. To summarize what we have seen, I could mention that we could spend a whole hour more talking about secure data exchange, cryptographic techniques. Well, we could even spend a whole semester with lectures on that topic, yeah? And a whole academic life. But for now, we're going to leave it here. Yes? But before jumping into the next section, which is authorizing non-authorized access to the device, I would like to quickly summarize the important concepts introduced here. First, that NFC technology is inherently secure due to its proximity. This strong barrier for attackers might not be enough if our application requires enhanced advanced security measures. In this case, we have dived into how we can secure even more the data being exchanged through the NFC interface or the data available in the EEPROM of a NFC tag. We have seen how we can use cryptographic techniques to achieve information security goals, and we have analyzed the 3 most important security goals: confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. Using cryptography implies the usage of cryptographic keys. And actually, we have seen how all the security in our system should focus, not all, but we should pay special and important attention to maintaining secret those cryptographic keys. Yes? And here is where the issue of the key management and distribution appears. Luckily for all of you, NXP SAM devices are the right tool to provide a secure key vault, and they require key distribution and cryptographic execution environment for those applications that require the additional level of security. Very well. So another security aspect we need to consider when designing NFC devices is the access to them. And again, if we go back to the 3 different architectures of NFC-enabled device, we can identify 2 main interfaces. The NFC interface, which is directly related to NFC technology addition and inherently secure. And then we can identify a generic cloud access interface. In this section, we will analyze and evaluate which security enhancements we can add to our NFC-enabled device in order to increase the level of security if it is required. And it is important, again, to emphasize if it is required, because maybe most of the applications and use cases might not require these enhanced security measures that are going to be introduced here. We will first review how the remote access to the device from the cloud can be secured to avoid unauthorized access, and then we will see which measures do NFC tag offer to protect the E2PROM data content to be modified by unauthorized entities or even modified at all. So first, remote access. What shall we take into account when securing the remote access? And another question, why should we care about protecting the remote access from non-authorized entities to our device? For example, applications such as a smart meter for gas or electricity do require advanced security measures to ensure access only to those authorized backend services that can read and adjust the consumption or even switch off the utility service. Imagine what would happen if some attacker disconnects our electricity service or gas at our home, or modifies the consumption. This would cause harm not only to the utility company, probably losing a customer, but also to the end user, yes, the consumer at the other end. Overall, our device needs to implement the adequate security measures to ensure the access is only granted to authorized servers, that avoids the exposure of private data, that has the mechanisms to provide a secure channel for communication between the backend and the device. And here again, the information security goal appears, ensures the overall integrity of the system, and protects the credentials if it is applicable. And again, the objectives described here can be achieved by using cryptographic techniques and methods based on hardware security modules. And here NXP offers the A-series security ICs, which are hardware security modules oriented for Internet of Things devices. This is any device connected to the cloud. This type of solutions are supporting a wide variety of applications and use cases, and can be easily added to your NFC-enabled device. Here NXP offers off-the-shelf solutions with a wide variety of services such as key injection during IC manufacturing, various on-chip applications supporting different protocols and communications with the backend, and sample software with high-level API to be integrated into your host to enable easy communication with the A-series IC. By adding an A-series module to your design, you are immediately taking a huge leap ahead in terms of security, and your device will be ready for the Internet of Things revolution. We will see right away how such a security model can be used for securing a channel on the use case that we're going to review. But before doing so, as I said before, the NFC interface can also be protected using measures that NFC tags from NXP offer. Another question that I throw here, why we would want to protect the access through the NFC interface? In the case of NFC tags, we have already seen in the previous section how it was possible to secure the data stored in the EEPROM. Now we want to go further ahead and prevent that non-authorized devices are able to modify or update this data stored in the EEPROM. The fact is that this might be necessary for applications where an NFC reader takes important decisions based on the data stored in the tag. In this case, it's of interest to ensure that only those authorized entities are able to modify the data, or even ensure that the data stored in the EEPROM is not modified at all. And here, NFC tags offer before going into the details, several features, yes, to protect the EEPROM content. In fact, all N tags, so all NFC tags, offer lock bits that can be configured to make the EEPROM only readable. Please note that in this case, this operation is irreversible. Also, NTAG-F products offer a password protection mechanism. And while it is not a cryptographic method, it still offers some valid level of protection. Here, certain parts of the memory can require a password authentication to write into them, and even to read and write into them. And obviously, only those entities in possession of this password will be able to access this part of the EEPROM memory. And finally, NTAG-I2C products can be configured in such a way that write access to the EEPROM memory is only available through the I2C interface, preventing this way any modification from the NFC interface. This shall be configurable through the NTAG-I2C registries and can be modified during the life cycle of the NTAG-I2C. Very good. So we are quickly reaching, we still have 15 minutes to go, but we are quickly reaching the end of this webinar. Allow me to drink some water. And after reviewing in detail all the security enhancements, let's look at two use cases and how it is possible to achieve a high level of security using NXP solutions. As a first use case, let's look into access control systems based on NFC technology. In fact, NFC technology in access control system is expected to grow at twice the rate of the overall market in the coming years, according to IHS. Nowadays, more than 200 million people use contactless cards powered by NXP technology to enter their offices. And in the hospitality market, more than 700 million contactless cards are being used every year. Besides the short market status on access control, there is a clear need of what an access control system shall provide, which is a selective restriction of access to a place or other resources. Such a system must be secure, intuitive, and fast for the user, and shall offer a simple and flexible management for the system administrator. No need to mention, but as you can expect, NFC technology is offering an excellent match for access control system. In a typical NFC access control, we always have the NFC readers on one side, remember the architecture, which represent the infrastructure and access control points, and the user credentials on the other side, which allow the user to be identified against the system. In principle, this is a good representation of a very simplified architecture of an NFC reader. The NFC data exchange between the reader and the credentials, here, this channel, is usually protected through cryptographic methods, which, as we have seen, implies the usage of cryptographic keys. This leads to the analysis we will do in the coming slides. Well, on one hand, credentials have no issue, as they are designed to securely store and protect those keys. But what about the NFC reader side? Well, one possibility is to store those cryptographic keys in the microcontroller. Here, the NFC reader would establish a secure communication with the credential to exchange and verify the data present in the credential. This way, authorizing or rejecting the access to the location or resource to that individual presenting the credential. But as we have seen before, microcontrollers are not designed to securely store and protect cryptographic keys. This is why NXP always recommends that in this case a secure access module is used, because only using a SAN device can we obtain the required level of security. Now, by using a SAN device, the keys can be stored in a secure vault, which is a SAN, yes, and can be used to perform cryptographic operations against the credential through the contactless interface and also against a backend server, yes, without leaving the secure vault. Also, furthermore, let me remind you that NXP MIFARE SAN devices implement all the required MIFARE cryptographic protocols to support your MIFARE-based application and your state-of-the-art innovative application. Good. So another use case is another NFC-enabled device that I would like to analyze. The security enhancements we can add is an internet gateway, a router that all of us have at home, if you have internet, of course. The router is truly the heart of our smartphone, and it is a device that provides internet connection to the rest of smart devices available at home. This means that it is something important to protect, as having a security breach in our home router implies leaving all of our devices to the mercy of possible attackers, our private data being stolen, and also the possibility that important tasks on our home are delayed or even stopped or canceled, modified. NXP proposes here a simplified architecture on how to enhance the security level of an internet gateway device. An A-series hardware security module to enhance the security towards the internet and the cloud, and an NFC reader to achieve confidential commissioning of network credentials to other IoT devices. But first thing first, how does an A-series product ensure the protection? So adding an A-series product to our device, we have seen that allows to grant the access to authorized server, prevents the exposure of private data, protecting the network credentials, and also securing the communication between the backend and the device. In this slide, we can observe two typical use cases of communication against the cloud. On one hand, we can see how the secret key, here in red, securely stored in the hardware security module and never leaves this hardware security module, is used to digitally sign a message that is then transmitted through the internet, which is an insecure network, non-trusted network. And any receiver in possession of the public key pair of the secret key, in blue here, can then verify the authenticity and integrity of the data exchange, of the data exchange. This is very useful in cases where the backend needs to trust the origin of the message and needs to ensure that it has not been modified. Another example in this slide can be seen here where a secure channel is established from the backend to the router. Using the private public key pairs, both entities can share the symmetric cryptographic keys that then can be used to perform encryption and decryption over the data being exchanged. In this case, it is usually recommended to use symmetric cryptography as the computing power required is much lower compared to, for encryption, is much lower compared to asymmetric cryptography. And this is useful to avoid any third party over this insecure cloud network to spy upon the data that is being exchanged. Okay, and finally, let's look at how adding a NFC reader and NFC reader to our internet gateway, we can also ensure confidential commissioning of IoT devices into that home network. In this case, adding an NFC reader to the internet gateway allows to implement use cases where any Internet of Things device that needs to be connected to the home network, can be confidentially connected without having to hassle around network key management and complex product commissioning. The IoT device will then include an NFC connected tag to perform this operation in a confidential and secure way. An example could be the following here. The NFC, the IoT device is tapped against the NFC reader of the Internet gateway. The Internet gateway through the NFC reader writes the network credentials in the E2PROM memory of the IoT device. Then the IoT device reads through the I2C bus of the NTAG I2C, the network credential, establishes the connection, whatever technology is required, and then deletes the network key over the E2PROM through the NTAG I2C bus. So a simple and convenient way to achieve a confidential and secure pairing against the home network through NFC technology. Excellent. So only left to summarize what we have seen and to share some conclusions. Before we summarize the main concepts I want all of you to remember from today, let me share this slide with you as a good reference on how to enhance the security of your NFC-enabled device in case your application requires it, of course. Good. Well, in this good book, we want to share with you a very simplified guide to the selection of which product is suitable for your NFC-enabled device. First distinction to make is if your device is going to require active NFC functionality. This is to behave as an NFC reader and generate a refill. If this is not the case, then your NFC device will include an NFC connected tag, and depending on the application requirements. Yes. And as we have seen, we can use the features offered by these products to protect the E2PROM content of the NFC tag from unauthorized access. But if our device is going to be an active NFC device, so behaving as a reader, we need to evaluate if our device is going to be connected to the cloud. If yes, and our application requires strong protection mechanisms from unauthorized access, the A-series hardware security models from NXP can protect the access to the device with its hardware-based cryptographic mechanisms and features. Finally, if our device is going to communicate with MIFARE-based technology, a MIFARE SAN device from NXP provides us with the right secure storage platform for MIFARE keys and implements all the MIFARE cryptographic protocols required, simplifying this way our application development and security-related management, as it is all included in the MIFARE SAN. Good. As said, take that as a quick reference. So to finalize the webinar, only left to share a quick summary and conclusions on what we have explained and reviewed today. If you recall, we have started explaining and demonstrating with figures and numbers the exponential growth of NFC-enabled devices and how the Internet of Things revolution is boosting this growth, but also raising several security concerns on some applications, as the number of competing devices that are interconnected and sharing data grows. The same does the appetite for hacking community. We have seen then the most typical NFC architectures of devices and analyze how it is possible to enhance the security, the system security that NFC already provides due to its proximity, if it is required by the application, of course. And we have seen that securing data exchange through NFC Internet interface and avoiding unauthorized access can be required for some specific and highly secure applications. Then we have analyzed what does secure data exchange mean, introducing the information security concepts of confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. These concepts are achieved through cryptographic techniques, remember encryption or digital signature. And overall here the conclusion has been that when using cryptographic methods, the use of cryptographic keys is necessary. As all the security relies on the secrecy of those keys, it becomes of utmost importance to properly manage and protect them. Here is where adding a SAN to your NFC-enabled device really adds value in terms of security for your application. Then we have analyzed how to ensure the protection to our device from unauthorized access to avoid attacks. We have seen the A-series hardware security modules from NXP offer the appropriate secure vault and cryptographic mechanisms and features to enhance the security of our device when connected to the cloud. And we finally also summarize the features offered by NFC tags to protect the EEPROM content from unauthorized updates through the NFC interface. We have then analyzed two particular applications and use cases: access control and an internet gateway, a router. And we have ended up with the conclusions. What is more important, and what I want you to take from today, is that it is always necessary to analyze the requirement of your applications and apply the appropriate measures. That makes the most sense. Some applications might require additional security measures, others not. Always take this into account. And remember that security is a state of mind. Also, take into account that perfect security does not exist and that there will always be a balance between security and risk. This right balance always needs to be established and must always take into account what a possible attacker might win versus the cost of the attack. Very well, so from our side, not much left to say. Please approach your NXP representative in case you want to discuss how to enhance the security design of your device. We will gladly help and support you. And if we have some time, I believe so, we will go through some of your questions. And it has been a pleasure from my side. And I hope you have learned a little bit more regarding what to care and how to care for while designing your device. Many thanks for your kind patience, and I would like now to hand the control back to Eric and answer some of those questions, if necessary.
Thank you, Carlos, for the presentation. Indeed, we have still some minutes left to address some of the questions. Some are obvious. So the first one would be, what does AES and TSS stands for?
Yes, this was one of the questions. I don't know if anyone has answered. That's quite easy. TSS, it stands for Triple Data Encryption Standard. So the algorithm behind is Data Encryption Standard, DES. And AES stands for Advanced Encryption Standard. And to complete the answers to the questions I stated, was both these algorithms are standardized by the US government, the NIST agency, by the way. Yes.
Okay, clear. Second one, what does RSA and ACC stand for? Again.
Well, those are asymmetric cryptographic algorithms or protocols, and RSA stands for Rivas, Shamir, and Adelman, which are the scientists that proposed this algorithm. And ECC stands for elliptic curve cryptography, which is a type of mathematical functions used in this type of cryptographic methods.
Which are those mathematical functions?
Yeah, well, RSA, they are both based on complex mathematical problems or functions, trapdoor functions, what are called, and which are easy to go from one side to the other, but very complicated to go backwards. Yes, RSA takes into account the complex, the factorization of large numbers, which is very complex computationally to do, though. And ECC, if I'm not wrong, takes into account the complexity of discrete logarithms over elliptic curve, discrete points. Yes. So these are the mathematical problems they are based on, or the trapdoor functions they are based on.
Okay. We have one question regarding the NTAX I2C. When disabling the writing from the RF side, does the pass-through from the RF to the MCU still enabled?
Well, the pass-through mode is a specific feature that allows to transfer a large amount of data from one interface to the other, but it uses a specific part of the memory, so not the EEPROM. Yes, it's the SRAM. And yes, this pass-through mode feature needs to be specifically enabled again using a session register from the NTAC I2C. Once it is enabled, it is also possible through another register to define the flow direction. So from the NFC interface to the I2C interface or the other way around. So this pass-through direction settings avoids locking the memory access during the data transfer from one interface to the SRAM buffer. Yes, but it's independent from the square prompt, meaning protection mechanism that I mentioned.
Okay, thank you for answering the questions. We are running out of time yet now, so I'm gonna close the session. Let me remind that you will receive by tomorrow an email with links to the presentation and the recorded session. And in case you need any additional support in relation to engineering and design services in the identification technology domain, please do not hesitate to contact us at themobileknowledge.com. On behalf of NXP Semiconductors and the Mobile Knowledge team, I thank you for your attention, and I hope you found the session helpful and enjoyable. When you close the session, please remember to fill out the short evaluation survey. Thank you all again and have a great day.